The girl asked, "Are you going to sell me like Papa?" And the mountain man cried. He woke before sunrise, chopped wood, checked his traps, and cooked simple food. Life was hard, but it was honest, and it asked nothing from him except survival. That morning the cold was sharper than usual. Frost covered the ground like thin white glass. As he stepped outside, he noticed something strange near the edge of the forest path. At first he thought it was an animal. Then he saw a small shape move. A child. She stood still, as if afraid that moving would make her disappear. Her clothes were too thin for the cold and her shoes were worn down. Her hair was messy and her face was dirty, but her eyes were clear and wide. They watched him carefully, like someone who had learned that adults were not always safe. The mountain man froze. He had not spoken to a child in many years. Children belonged to towns, families, warm houses, and noisy places. They did not belong here in the quiet mountains where mistakes came with heavy costs. "Are you lost?" he asked, his voice rough from lack of use. The girl did not answer right away. She hugged her arms around herself and took a small step back. He could see fear in her body, not loud fear, but tired fear, the kind that comes from being scared for too long. "I'm not lost," she said finally. "I was left." "You shouldn't be out here." The smell of wood and soup filled the room. She sat on the edge of a chair, ready to run if needed. He placed a bowl of soup in front of her and stepped back. "You don't have to eat," he said, "but it's there." The mountain man turned away to give her space. He pretended to fix something on the wall, but he was listening. He noticed how quietly she ate, how she never asked for more, how she kept glancing at the door. When she finished, she wiped her mouth with her sleeve. "Thank you," she said softly. He nodded. "What's your name?" "I think." The fire crackled. Outside, the wind pushed against the walls. Lena finally looked up at him, her eyes serious. "Are you going to sell me like Papa?" Nights where he had chosen to walk away instead of helping. He had told himself he was not responsible. He had told himself survival came first. He looked at Lena, at her small shoulders, at the way she braced herself for an answer she feared. "No," he said, his voice low and firm. "I'm not." "Papa said it was only for a little while," she continued. "He said people would take care of me, but they didn't. They just passed me on." She nodded slowly, but her body stayed tense. As the day went on, he gave her an extra blanket and showed her where to wash her hands. She followed him quietly, copying his movements. She asked no questions. That worried him more than if she had asked many. By evening, snow began to fall. Thick, heavy flakes covered the ground, cutting off the path back to wherever she had come from. The mountain man stood by the window and watched the world disappear under white. He knew then that this was not just a passing moment. Leaving her outside was not an option. Taking her to town meant questions, systems, and people who might not protect her. Keeping her meant responsibility he had avoided his whole life. That night, Lena sat near the fire, drawing shapes in the dust on the floor. She looked peaceful for the first time, but she kept checking to see if he was still there. When it was time to sleep, he gave her his bed and took a blanket for himself near the fire. "You don't have to do that," she said. "It's fine," he replied. "Get some rest." "No," he said, "I won't." And he knew his life would never be the same again. Morning came slowly in the mountains. Pale light slipped through the small window and rested on the wooden floor. The fire from the night before had turned into soft red embers. The mountain man opened his eyes and for a moment forgot that he was not alone. Then he heard quiet breathing. Lena slept on his bed, curled like a small animal finding warmth. The blanket covered her almost completely. Her face, now clean from the night before, looked younger and more tired than it had the day before. He watched her for a few seconds and felt something heavy and unfamiliar in his chest. It was not fear. It was not anger. It was responsibility. He stood up quietly and stepped outside. The snow had stopped, leaving the world bright and silent. Every tree wore a white coat. The path was gone. There was no easy way down the mountain now. He filled a bucket with snow and set it near the fire to melt. As he worked, his mind drifted back to places he had not visited in years. He had not always lived alone. Long ago, he had lived near a mining town at the edge of the mountains. People there worked hard and spoke little, but there was laughter too. He had known families, children, neighbors, but when work dried up, so did kindness. People began making choices they never thought they would make. Some left. Some stayed and became harder. He had stayed. He remembered seeing children standing outside shops, waiting too long for parents who did not come back. He remembered telling himself it was not his problem. He had needed to survive. That excuse had followed him all the way up the mountain when he finally left. Inside the cabin, Lena stirred. When she sat up and saw him, she relaxed a little. "Good morning," he said. "Morning," she replied, rubbing her eyes. He poured warm water into a small bowl and placed it near her. "You can wash your face." She looked surprised. "It's okay." People asked questions. "Do you know where your papa is now?" he asked. She shook her head. "He left me with a man in a town, said he'd be back. He never came." "You didn't do anything wrong." "I always say it," she replied. He stopped walking and looked at her. "You don't have to say it here." But the idea of handing her over to strangers made his stomach turn. That night he dreamed of the old town. He dreamed of faces he had ignored. He woke up sweating, his heart racing. Lena sat up at the sound. "Bad dream?" she asked. "Yes," he said honestly. She scooted closer to the fire. "I have those too." "You won't be forgotten here." One evening as they ate, she asked, "Why do you live alone?" One afternoon, while gathering wood, they heard voices in the distance. The mountain man froze. He motioned for Lena to hide behind a tree. Two men passed by on the lower trail. They talked loudly about trade and travel. One of them laughed. The sound made Lena tremble. When they were gone, she whispered, "Are they looking for me?" "But we need to be careful." "Yes," he said quietly, "like family." The first sign of trouble came on a quiet afternoon. The snow had almost melted, and thin lines of brown earth showed through the white. Birds had returned, and the mountains no longer felt frozen and still. Life was moving again. Lena was sitting outside the cabin, tying small pieces of string together. She said it was a game she used to play when she had nothing else. The mountain man was repairing a broken fence when he heard a sound that did not belong to the forest. A distant shout, then another. He stopped working and listened carefully. The voices were far away, but they were human voices, carried by the open air. He felt his body tense. Visitors were rare this high up, especially this early in the season. He walked back to the cabin and placed a hand on Lena's shoulder. "Go inside," he said calmly. "Why?" she asked, her eyes already searching his face. "Just for now." One of them pointed toward the cabin. The mountain man stepped forward so he could be clearly seen. He did not want surprises. The men approached slowly. "Didn't expect to see anyone living up here," one of them said. "Not many do," the mountain man replied. The second man glanced toward the cabin. "You alone?" "We're looking for a child," the first man said. "A girl about 8, quiet." "People like that never stay in one place." "Are they going to take me?" Every sound outside felt louder. The mountain man kept the fire low and his pack close. He knew hiding would only work for so long. The next morning he made a decision. "We're leaving the cabin," he told Lena. Her eyes widened. "Why?" "Somewhere I know. But we won't make it easy." Lena grew quieter again, her old fear creeping back. She jumped at sounds. She asked questions he could not always answer. One night she finally spoke what she had been holding inside. "If they find me," she said, staring at the floor, "will you give me away?" "Then I will stand in their way." A single figure this time, watching. He returned quickly and told Lena to stay hidden. He stepped outside and waited. The man approached cautiously. "You lied," he said. "She's with you." Not something to be passed around. She had heard everything. "You stood up," she said quietly. "Yes." For the first time in his life, he was ready to be seen. The mountains felt different now. The quiet was no longer empty. It was filled with waiting. After the man left the ridge, the mountain man knew hiding forever was not possible. People who believed they had a claim never stopped looking. He also knew that running deeper into the mountains would only delay the problem, not solve it. Lena needed more than protection in the shadows. She needed a future where she did not have to be afraid of every sound. That night he sat awake while Lena slept. Her breathing was slow and steady, her face calm in the soft firelight. He watched her and felt the weight of every choice he had ever made. For years, he had chosen distance. Now he had to choose direction. In the morning, he told her the truth. "We're going down the mountain," he said. She sat up quickly. "To the town." "You won't leave me there." The path felt heavier going down than it ever had going up. The mountain man stayed alert, watching every bend in the trail. Lena held his hand without asking. He let her. When the town finally came into view, Lena stopped walking. "I don't like it," she said softly. "I know," he replied, "but we won't stay longer than needed." People moved quickly, focused on their own lives. Some glanced at them, then looked away. The mountain man guided Lena toward a building near the center, one he remembered from long ago. Inside, the air was warm. A woman behind a desk looked up. "Can I help you?" She came around the desk and knelt in front of Lena. "Hello," she said gently. "What's your name?" "And I want to keep doing that." The mountain man waited alone, his hands clasped tightly. Hours passed. When the woman returned, she smiled softly. "She's strong," she said, "and she trusts you." There were steps to follow. Nothing happened quickly, but no one tried to take Lena away from him. That alone felt like a miracle. When Lena came back into the room, she ran to him and wrapped her arms around his waist. He froze for a moment, then held her gently. "They said I can stay with you," she whispered. Tears filled his eyes. He turned his face away, but it was too late. They fell anyway. Over the next weeks, they stayed in a small place near the town. Lena went to a school during the day. At first, she was quiet, watching from the edges. Then she started raising her hand. Then she started smiling. The mountain man waited outside every afternoon. He watched her run toward him, her fear slowly replaced by excitement. Each day, she seemed lighter. One evening, as they walked back together, Lena looked up at him. "You cried that first day," she said. He nodded. "I did." The mountains watched from a distance as their lives changed. The man who once hid now spoke openly. He learned new routines, new words, new ways to care. It was not easy. He made mistakes. He apologized when he did. Lena learned too. She learned that questions could be answered honestly, that promises could be kept, that home was not a place you were sent away from. One quiet evening they stood on a hill outside the town. The mountains glowed in the sunset. "Do you miss it?" Lena asked. "Yes," he said, "but I don't regret leaving.